Byzantine Empire. And one thing that I always think about is, Byzantine Empire, they kept building these huge monoliths and these huge castles, if you will, these huge imperial buildings, and where, the emperor and his team of advisors sat there, thinking of more clever ways to colonize and conquer someone and enslave someone, and so afraid to lose their material wealth and power. And there was no such thing as, voting or anything like that. Again, the emperor only had his, advisors, a bunch of other rich folks, and he would advise with them, and then make a decision by himself, the way masses and millions in the empire will live. And outside of the castle walls, there was these cities such as Alexandria and things like that. I don't remember exactly, what was the name of Alexandria at that time in the Byzantine Empire. But if you can imagine these cities, filthy, dirty, people, homeless people out in the street, everyone fighting and arguing for a piece of bread. And the Byzantine Empire, again, they conquered so much territory, man. And only the top ranks really, seeing any fruit of their evil actions. So they come to the Slavic territory. And over there is culture. Civilization meets culture. Again, this is around 6th century. And the cultured people, Slavic people, ancient Slavs of that time, again, living according with natural law, with the universal law. They say that Napoleon in France gave birth to democracy. It's, couldn't be farther from the truth, man. Bunch of BS, because again, in the cultured society, they had the wisest men, about 10 or 20 wisest men would come every week or every month, and they would address the most serious questions, according, again, with the natural laws of this planet and with the natural laws of the universe. What would be literally and fundamentally better for our society, and yet still keeping the natural laws? And, let's say the 20 of the wisest men, their whole life, they lived and they were meant to become that, the wisest men. And 20 of them would sit around the circle, and the voting was done such that every single one of the 20 wise men would have to agree with this or that issue. It wasn't, 51% votes yes and 50 votes nay, so, we move on with the no. They came back over and over until everyone could agree on a question or a decision. True culture. And again, before I forget this, in civilization, we're born and, most of us are only left with a few options of career choices that we can make. Most of the time it's done. We look at where did my grandparents or my parents go to college, and if they didn't go to college, we'll pick the closest thing. 90% of us, we hate our jobs. We hate You know, even in college, we don't know why we chose such and such major. We do it because the money's better. You know, most of the heart attacks happen on Monday mornings because people wake up and they're so stressed out that they have to go to work. They hate their job. That's civilization. And culture, and the way our ancestors lived, culture, as soon as a child was born, it was given two names. One right away and one at age 7. The one right away was a secret name, and it described the life path of that child. A life path according with the universal laws, according what is better for that society and that people, again, for the organ to function properly, for the planet to function properly. The other name they would get at 7 years old. Until 7, no one knew their name. They wouldn't even cut the hair of a child. Let's say it was a boy, they wouldn't even cut their hair because they didn't want the child to be recognized as boy or girl before the age 7. Of course, genders were very important. The energy of both genders and procreating was very important. But before the age of 7, the child was little by little trained and prepared for the life path. And at age 7, they would get a name that everyone else knew. And the secret name that they were given at birth, no one needed to know, but it described their life path, that they would excel and get better for throughout the years. They had an interest to live. They had a purpose to live. Today we, look at someone and say, oh, that's a model, or that's a construction worker. When you meet someone, you automatically want to know their profession. It doesn't describe anything, their profession, really. It doesn't describe the person that they are. All it describes is what they had to do in order to survive in this civilization. It does by no means describe who they truly are. That's why it's the most shallowest thing that civilization has taught us. As soon as you meet someone, you ask them their name. The second question you ask, well, what do you do? Especially women like to do this thing. Of course, if we live by culture, that would say a lot. It would describe your life path. It would describe your purpose. Well, today, we have all these different careers, but they're purposeless. And it's what drives most of us mad. It's what gives us that void inside that we can't avoid throughout life, man. That is why the most wealthiest countries have the highest rate of suicide. Because no matter how much material gain and possessions you acquire, deep inside, you know that you are living with no purpose, meaning a higher purpose, a purpose for your people, a purpose for this planet, a purpose according with the universal laws. So the Byzantine Empire comes and in the 6th century again sees the way culture is living, and they hate it. They want to conquer them as they wanted to conquer everything. They want to enslave them. They couldn't conquer Slavic people physically, even with all their weaponry. So they started to do it intellectually, because again, evil is very intellectual, very sneaky. Civilization, very intellectual, very sneaky. And I know you ask yourself, well, isn't intellect the highest that we have? No. Intuition, love, and pure understanding, and being in touch with your true I, that is the highest. We have this saying in Slavic culture. There's this fairy tale character called Ivan Durachok, and the moral of the story for Ivan Durachok is that he has three brothers, and those three brothers are, they're very intellectual and they're very sneaky. But Ivan Durachok, he just, lays around, doesn't really do anything. But a mission comes up, and a wise man, wants to put everyone to the test, and they say, go there, I don't know where. Get that, I don't know what. The three intellectual brothers, they're lost, their mind, they're going crazy. What does that even mean? Ivan Durachok, because he's above intellect, he's in touch with the cosmos. He knows exactly where to go and what to bring. So again, civilization teaches us there's no higher than the intellect. The core of you and your I that is boundless to time and space teaches you you're always in tune. So you don't need a crazy intellect for that. You can surrender to the Creator and know that the Creator will always lead you where you need to be. Again, one is civilization, one is culture. So, Byzantine Empire, they couldn't get to the Slavic people all the way until 9th century when Kiev and Rus, and that's a whole other topic, but to cut it short, was baptized or Christianized. And of course, at that time, with the world population being so small, more than 9 to 15 million Slavic people were slaughtered because they didn't want to accept the new religion. And if someone, I always keep repeating this, if they would come to them and would bring them and explain to them the religion with understanding and with a comply, they would always comply. They would always make the best decision for culture. But no, they came with force and they burned villages and raped women, as civilization always does. Slaughtered babies, millions upon millions. I want to go back a little to the way Slavic people, they didn't do anything from the way they build. And again, this is not only Slavic, but all the ancient people who lived by culture. They didn't only, from the way they built their homes to the clothes that they wore, everything was in accordance and without misusing Mother Planet and according with the universal laws. If they built houses, and I'll post up civilization the way we are living somewhere right here, and the way ancient people lived culturally, I'll put it right here, and you can see the difference. But they had massive houses and living quarters, and no living quarters was like civilization has now, made out of sharp corners that drain the energy. No, they were all round, and no structure and no house was the way we do now, go into the forest and chop down hundreds and millions of acres of forest. If the people living by culture and Slavic people, if they only even chopped down one tree, it was because something was done in return for Mother Nature. They asked for that tree and did something for it. People living with culture and culturally, again, cultivation close to earth. They knew that having a village or a city with more than 10,000 people, if you had more than 10,000 people, Mother Nature could not sustain that life. Look at this mega cities that we have now, millions of people, literal huge gas chamber with all these cancers and other sicknesses, children having cancer. And it's getting worse and worse. So again, Byzantine Empire with force conquers them. History goes on. Civilization keeps evolving. By the way, as we can see already, civilization is not civilized at all. But anyway, time goes on. Europe, Western Europe, Western Europe, the gray, not white people. And I don't want to pinpoint this to, a race or whatever. It's more of this structure of globalists and, we like to say Illuminati and things like that. But these dynasties that impose civilization, Western Europe around, the 1400s, when, Spain sent out Columbus on an expedition to find new land. You have to remember that at that time, this is, 15th century, the 1400s, Western Europe exhausted, misused, and killed 70% or 75% of all of their natural resources, civilization. Chopping everything in their way, man. Misusing everything in their way, man. All their forests were gone because, it was the dawn of Renaissance, man. And, they decided they want to have red oak tables and stuff like that, man. Fish were almost gone from their rivers. You think they were on an expedition to find new land? No, they had no choice but to go and find new land. 75% of all the natural resources. Just like now, we are running out of all of our natural resources. They come to the Americas. And the reason they keep calling it new land is because it was truly new, untouched, unspoiled territory. Not because the people living there couldn't do it, because the people there at that time, the Native American Indians from North to South America, they lived according to culture, culturally, one with Mother Nature, with Mother Earth. People there lived peacefully, loving nature. This land was lush with green and waterfalls and huge trees. When was the last time you went outside and you seen a huge tree? We have a little park in a little, compared to the whole country, somewhere in California, with these huge red oak trees and things like that. But this whole continent was covered with it. Beautiful Native American people, Native American Indians, which now they're almost wiped out. Makes me want to cry. And I've been to a reservation. I've seen what civilization has done to them. Drove them into a corner, just like all the ancient people of the world. But the Western Europeans come here, start chopping everything down because they're looking for their gold, and they stick their flag in a land. They say it's mine. Let's start a war. Let's start shooting people, stabbing people, chopping everything down. If you ever watch a movie of what Western Europeans did to this land only a few months after arriving, it's disgusting. They took this beautiful, lush land and turned it into a pigsty, literally, because they brought pigs here running around. Because they were pigs inside, man. So, of course, if you're going to be a pig, your surroundings will be a pig. So, The question remains, Native American Indians, again, living by culture, culturally, loving Mother Nature, respecting everything and everyone around, spreading nothing but love, in tune. They didn't know things as jealousy. They didn't know such things as murder. Ask yourself, who was more civilized? The nasty ass Western, gray, not white Europeans? Or the people living in harmony, accordance with the natural universal laws? Again, we all know what happened a couple hundred years, not even a couple hundred years after they arrived here. What does civilization think? Well, we gotta build cities. We gotta destroy everything in our path. We gotta build cities, but we're too lazy to do it ourselves. What are we gonna do? We're gonna go into one of the most naturally rich continents. Beautiful Mother Africa. And by trickery, by the trickery of the intellect, we're going to trick the people, and by the thousands and the millions bring them over here, man. And on the way, we're going to dump thousands of them into the Atlantic Ocean. The ones that don't make it, screw them. We're going to bring them here. We're going to do disgusting things that I can't even talk about. Again, what does civilization do? They rape and they kill. Why were they able to conquer Africa that easy? Well, again, because civilization sits there for a couple hundred years thinking of more sick ways and sick weapons that they can come up with. Whereas to people in Africa lived, again, culturally in accordance with their family, with their ancestors, with that land, performing their duties and living one with the universal laws. You're going to speak about pyramids and things like that, and the story of pyramids as being on Africa. The story of the pyramids is a huge lie too, and we're going to do a separate video on it, but let's stick to civilization versus culture. So civilization brings the culture here. The beautiful African people. They start mating them. Can you imagine? Poor children. They take them to the markets and a buyer comes and checks them like a piece of furniture. Civilization. Civilization did the same thing to